talking about how this red light, green light structure made sense to us maybe a year ago. And you'll see what we mean by the red light, green light, because there's a graphic. Like red, meaning you, the professor, allow no AI in your class. Down to yellow, down to green, you, the professor, allow any use of AI as long as it's cited correctly. That framework made a lot of sense to us when AI was sort of in discrete places. It was huge, but it was in discrete places. But now AI is everywhere. So if a professor were to say to their students, you can't use AI, does that mean that they can't use Google? They can't use JSTOR? They can't use Word? We have to be more nuanced. So we started talking about this idea of dispositions. And that's what we're sort of leading up to.
Our email addresses are up here. If you don't know me, I am in charge of the Office of Academic Integrity, so I'm not going to focus too much on sort of like what you should do if you have a concern, but I want to make sure you know that if you do, you can always get in touch with our office. I'm at A. Thomas, but our office is Academic Integrity at American.edu. So if any issues come up, I want you to know that we're here. And it doesn't have to be a situation where you're like, I figured this out, I know the answer. You can call us for advice at any time, and doing that doesn't conscript you to any course of action. I did want to note that these slides were generated using Canva Magic. I use Canva for all the slides that I make, and Magic is powered by AI, so that means it's suggesting to me layout, design, graphic elements, images sometimes, and I take it up on that sometimes. But all the decision-making, all the language, all the text, all the organizing principles were decided on by Kelly and by me. If you want to access the slides on your own device, this QR code will work, and so should this tiny URL. Maybe this isn't an optimal viewing for you. We'll also make sure the slides are available through the AFW site. So many of you, I've seen a number of you over the past sort of week and a half in a few different contexts maybe, so you may have heard me say this already, but I did want to kind of use this as a bit of a frame for the conversation. I think it's important for faculty to know some of the ways that in the Office of Academic Integrity, we saw students misusing generative AI tools, whether or not there was a policy in the class. And so I feel like this is important to tell you so that you can kind of think about, how do I account for this? How do I address this? Do I want to engage with this, and how should I do that? These are kind of my takeaways from the AI use and misuse we saw. So I think a lot of students told us, both in the context of cases and outside of cases. So when I go and do development or workshops or visits to student groups, they're telling me they're using AI tools for research. They are using ChatGPT to locate sources, to find research. They are, in general, kind of using similar approaches to ChatGPT and other AI tools that they use to Google. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But ChatGPT is not Google. And there are concerns and risks that come with approaching generative AI tools the way we might have approached a Google search like 2-3 years ago. They're using AI tools to summarize, and in particular to summarize lengthy texts, complicated texts, scholarly articles, things that would take a long time to read. They are uploading to generative AI tools and asking for a summary. They are also asking AI tools to draw out quotes. So a student has a paper to write, they're supposed to use sources, they've got some PDFs, they've uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, pull out some quotes I should use in my paper about. And then those tools will suggest things and put quotation marks around it. And sometimes that language doesn't appear exactly as is in the source. That's how it ends up coming our way, because it's not really quoted from the text. It's a misrepresentation of something that's in the text, potential academic integrity issue. There's also a lot of students using AI tools to generate citations. So not even find me a source, but like give me a citation that's related to the topic of global security. And then here are 3 citations that it's giving you, and then a student is taking those citations, putting them in their works cited page, and then sprinkling them into the text that they've written from their brain. I don't know. And so this sort of sprinkle approach is not new for those of us who have engaged with students doing research for a long period of time. It's just that AI tools have exacerbated that issue because it's that much easier to get a citation. They're also using AI tools to do things they associate with grammar. I've got fix my grammar in quotation marks here because sometimes what students think is grammatical help is more like what I would consider deep revision, well, at best. Right? Sentence level error correction, okay. Suggesting grammatically correct constructions, okay. But when students talk about fixing, editing, revising, often they mean something way more substantial than what I'm imagining on the other side of that equation. So I wanted to tell you that's what we're seeing. And from that is derived kind of my big picture advice, which many of you have heard before. I think especially at this juncture, clarifying syllabus language is non-negotiable. Like, you need syllabus language that says something about generative AI. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. I wish we could. But acknowledging it is really important. And I would encourage you to approach with an open mind the notion that we don't always know where AI power is. Kelly alluded to this earlier. AI power is in so many things now. I know that a lot of faculty are sort of the mind that the use of AI is cheating. And so I would encourage you at this point to kind of take a step back from that decision and approach with curiosity instead of a kind of finality, because you may not know if AI is at work. Students may not know if AI is at work. Our students have gone on long journeys with AI in ways that many of our faculty have not. And so giving them a chance to sort of talk that through in a way that doesn't feel like I'm getting accused of cheating is really important. Giving specific guidelines for each assignment, focusing on tasks it's okay to use AI to do versus tasks it's not okay to use AI to do, and why. The why is the most important part of all of this. I encourage you to hook the why or attach the why to your learning outcomes. Make decisions about your approach to AI, about the rules that you have for students based on your learning outcomes, and tell students how they're connected. You can't learn how to fill in the blank in this class if you use AI to offload it, right? Expanding that guidance is key to what's that.
So this is the red light, yellow light, green light graphic that made a lot of sense to us as recently as maybe last fall. So I think anybody adopting the red light could be someone who just doesn't want to engage with AI. But that's just not realistic in the real. So this was the framework that a lot of us were using to sort of craft our language and our approach to AI. Of course, any stand you take is going to require students to cite any use of AI. But it was presumed that if you took the red light, then students were not going to use AI, but that's no longer realistic. Yeah, so this is sort of what we're using as a used to be, and then we're proposing a new sort of paradigm.
Yeah, I think I don't want to vilify this. Certainly, I think there are some useful things in here, and so if you're starting from the point of like AI, what's that? Then maybe this is a really good place to start and to start conversations about it. Kelly's right, the no use without a whole lot of other conversation may not be a realistic approach. So this is me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Kelly and I started talking about this over the summer, and this conversation about dispositions came out in our conversation. And dispositions is a term that's like made its way into lots of different frameworks in higher education. But for us as teachers of writing and research and information literacy, the idea of dispositions came to us from the ACRL information literacy framework. That's the American College Research Libraries framework for information literacy in higher education. And this is a framework that kind of describes how we can help students become responsible seekers and users of information. And they describe kind of a set of dispositions, a kind of set of approaches or ways to interact that I think is a really useful way we can frame this discussion. So this is from one of those ACRL documents, just defining dispositions as a tendency to act or think in a particular way, a cluster of preferences, attitudes, and intentions, as well as a set of capabilities that allows the preferences to become realized in a particular way. And so I'll use this to kind of give you an example. Like you have a disposition towards Google, for example, and especially like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe we had similar approaches to Google, similar dispositions. Like when I Google something, I'm not using keywords the way I do when I'm using more specialized resources, right? Like when I Google something, I'm usually typing in a whole sentence, or sometimes I'm typing a whole question and putting a question mark at the end, right? And then when I get a list of Google results, I'm expecting that in the top 3, I'm going to see what I want. I'm definitely not going to the second page. These are all things that kind of describe my disposition toward Google, right? And so thinking about what our dispositions are in relation to specific tools is useful here. Our dispositions toward Google might be changing now that Google has AI power. Think about what your disposition is now and how has it evolved. And here's an example of one of my Google searches. I wanted an AI generated eagle that was smiling. It's actually really hard to get AI to generate an eagle that doesn't look like it's going to murder you. And I love the one in the middle that seems to have both wings and hands. So I thought I would sort of leave that there. But one of the things that's happening with Google, it's going to change our disposition, is that AI has made some of the like basic functions of Google a little bit different. It's like not as good, or it's not putting the things that we want closer to the top, or there's a Google results summary at the top that's generated by AI. And so thinking about this notion of dispositions seemed in our conversation to be really useful. Especially not just for how students' dispositions are in relation to these technologies, but how we might be towards these technologies in our classroom and in our expression, our articulation of that in our class materials.
So what, should we have everybody identify their unit and such, where they're coming from? Would that be?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Identify what's your name and what unit are you from?
And from Studio program.
Studio Art, okay. Betsy?
Betsy Cohen, SIS.
Jeff Lane, Commercial Government.
Barbara Johnson, TESOL. Joanne Land, Law School.
Eric Clark, History.
Stefan AFW.
Art Keesman, Borough Public Administration Policies.
Brad Knight, undergraduate education and academic student services.
And Department of Library. Again, Edwards, Health Studies. Because the values of sociology. Nice to meet you. Science. Sarah Everson, sociology.
Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to task you with coming up with policy based upon a specific disposition that we're imposing on you. It would be really interesting if you came up with language. Equally important is just having a discussion about what it means to have this disposition and what kind of language should go into a policy, knowing that we're talking about syllabus policy, but you would also want to have a conversation with your students early and often about this stuff. If you're at a table by yourself, maybe you could join another group.
One thing I think that's really useful here too is like, I mean, hopefully you you get a disposition that maybe is very different from how you feel or what you think your disposition really is. So you can kind of try that on, but also accept the notion that like students are going to see different dispositions towards AI across their curriculum. And I think in the spirit of kind of approaching these questions with curiosity, I think it's really useful to sort of recognize that there may be other ways to think about this.
Yeah. When I did this with the Ready Studies program, there was a person at one table who was in the skeptical camp. No, he was in the enthusiastic camp, and he heard that there was a skeptical camp, and he said, So that's your disposition. You just- Yeah, top two.
We're supposed to, this we're supposed to.
No, we're supposed to. Can you go back to the next?
Yeah, so a couple of things that you have, like, if you use this QR code, it'll take you to a Google Doc where you can record your thinking. If that's language, like text that could go in a syllabus, awesome. If it's bullet points, like here are the values or here are the things that we're really thinking about as we develop our ideas about this, that would be great. I'd love to be able to sort of share this or to model this or to invite other folks to discussions like this. So if you would kind of record some of the ideas. And there's a description of what we're asking you to do on that document as well. Everybody okay with that document? Let me know if there's any problems getting in.
They're labeled group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, so Betsy's table could be 1, and then the collaborative group could be 2, and then
Nothing.
forget what the third group is called.
Not getting in.
Skeptical could be 4, but Brad, your group could be 3. AI curious.
To display their disposition. Which is
It's not working? Let me check and see if I've got a tiny URL for this, Eric. I can make one.
I would think.
But you're you.
Not close enough.
Yeah, two.
Oh, is one of you in over there? Okay, so probably good.
Not just a citation to,
Yeah.
there's what I did.
Bell.
I'm cheating a little, social information points out daughter. How in her classes it's been done, but yeah. And then if you didn't use that, explain.
So, which one, there will be.
Yeah, exactly.
This is in your assignments for this class.
Yeah, I was gonna say this feels right. Yeah, what is the?
Or is it?
Well, I mean, it could see how students may.
So I tried.
I think that they might.
Yeah.
Building understanding.
So once you get into the document, you can type in your box.
Yeah, so for example, what does it mean?
So you're doing it on
Like where you-
this.
And then I have. Yeah. I was I'm writing here. You want me to write right now? It's like actually, seems like everybody gets it.
She's right.
Who's typing in group 1?
And
We're one, but someone like sufficient, no. Someone else take over.
Who's typing in group 1?
Sufficient.
yeah.
Kelly, tell me which group is which and I'll just put it up here. So enthusiastic is group 1,
Yeah.
collaborative,
Is 2.
Yeah, and I think of further
okay.
questions.
Curious is, all right. Are you group 2? Group 4.
I don't know.
I'm gonna put you in group 4. And then skeptical, group 3, or group 2. That would make sense, right?
What our policies would say.
Highlighting.
What you
Yeah.
Correct.
So the goal is, talk about what you usually
What would you say?
I always tell them like, most is, like, keep our box. So that anything else, you know, it's like one layer.
Anyway, so I just have a person, okay, you were doing great there, so, in your assignments for this course, we encourage you to use generative AI. Think of it as a creative, what was the word?
Now, there's one thing now.
Think of it, AI as your, AI as your
It's almost use AI, but you gotta something use AI.
Like collaborative.
And maybe,
Partly just, sort of.
maybe we can,
I'm gonna go back one page.
I wish they can solve.
Like,
Can
it
you
should
go
just be able to
letterize,
say,
relaxing,
add where.
Maybe I do like
give
things.
the response to the child.
Why?
Some close the requirements.
I have full AI.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing.
Yeah, see, there's the used to AI, that's what I was.
At least for me, it's like there's a lot of.
I mean, the only thing that.
Also like what you can business conference, how you verify.
Prompt and
There's a lot of.
actually, so what about the assignment project?
I thought maybe
no, it is, but that is exactly.
Yeah, no,
They have to demonstrate learning.
maybe we can talk about this more.
How much work should you
Okay.
well, also, I mean, I think we can be enthusiastic, but we can also set targets. Yeah, with the collaborator, particularly for these ones.
Right, so.
Brainstorming.
So I'm actually teaching
Well, you're saying you want to specify specific tasks.
I have.
Is that?
Yeah, no, yeah, some things out. Like
When I think.
you're definitely gonna see it questions. And one of my colleagues said this really cool.
And I said to my students, don't, it's like, or they were turning on.
So, you need to document your process.
So they have some essential questions.
Research, brainstorm, these kind of stuff.
Yeah, see what I mean, this is something like that. I would start with the reality. Right, exactly.
Provide.
No, it isn't, I agree, it isn't, and that's an essentially, like, I think, so I think that's what I do think.
And it's like, oh, you see.
So it sounds like you're trying to, I encourage you to sit, like, I encourage you to sit for this part, and this type shit. It's great. I encourage you to use this last part is a question.
Oh, I heard about that.
What is it you're still doing?
If they work on it, it's like, it's like, it's a critical thing to hear, like, something
You're
about
right. Yeah.
technician, just like.
Yeah, no, so, yeah.
You demonstrate your learning, right, or your competency, your skills, your capability, whatever it is. You must document your AI use by doing what?
What about?
It's like reading a script. Ethical use of AI and methods.
And then one type of AI. Like citation.
Don't we have to provide the ethical burdens?
AI to rules.
They have to come up, so then they question them.
No.
I don't know, I mean, once you get to know a lot, which I think.
What you think is what
Oh, see, so I'm not, you have to kind of show them.
Because
It, I look at
something else, what I can figure out is that.
Yeah, it is, yes. AI is, I want students to come out, so, like, this fun is now more complex.
Right.
Yeah, and then maybe everybody on assignment, they can say, I don't know, maybe they got a little bit of this stuff, that would act out.
My pure.
Yeah, so I
This gets to your idea
that
you have to say, if I use AI.
The rules of the truth of this, I see videos about DC describing AI philosophy about what's actually on the experiment.
The connection, you are Professor TV, how do you guys do that?
I know, but then they just tell AI to come through somewhere. It was like, sorry, keep the lines out. So, yeah, I think that I would, yeah, because it's like neat stuff, public. It's tricky.
Alright, this is what I got.
Okay,
I'm taking notes, and I have some sentences that don't.
Right.
Alright, on your assignment for this course, we very basically do the generative AI. Yeah.
share some other reflections.
Getting more specific into the ideas expressed and not that we necessarily
And provide a memo demonstrating your expertise of AI.
what is it
Including AI technology.
I feel like that's an important, like,
And a memo is a critical reflection on AI used by one.
what did it look like in this situation? What do you have to tell us?
So I also just one of the I'm total skeptic.
So I want to make sure I mention
Well, no, but there needs to be some specifics here about where they demonstrate.
But me and starting to sound like this is like a whole separate thing. Writing about how I could use AI to do the underlying.
It's more work.
But, yeah.
lighting clock down the.
Your assignment becomes too much.
So how do they document their AI use? So you must cite the
About how
process
wonderful
for
summer
AI
science was.
Yeah, any threat.
Yeah, I mean, this is the majority not anything AI subject and tool. Setting it as a tool.
I feel like, and again,
That is not. Do it as a subject.
going back, which is like, as a church.
To what extent are WRC
Even in
classes
office, I would.
AI literacy?
I think it's coming. That Titan survey that I look at every year shows that not faculty, not students, not staff, but administrators are saying, yes, I expect to see AI literacy in the curriculum.
That I'm really about, which is like full, so they do the class.
What time are we done?
That I would ask
I'm not gonna judge myself.
it should be right now, because one of the questions I got is why is it in the atmosphere? What is right about how it relates research that I would ask when of the page, and where that is, where the section of that research article in that they were going to bring so because what I felt I was getting was just in aggregate, we're just loading the research into AI, saying, what's the most interesting thing about this article? And AI was saying that it felt was interesting, for chat, and paper, and submitting that as their lecture. So I thought, they're gonna found it, and they actually what they think about it, even if I was a capstone in class, right? 40 minutes, I get it.
How we
Maybe we can hold on to that.
Because I have a lot of idea, but people go over people English, but language. So a lot, I have a lot of ideas. I think what's meaning is myself. When I say, because I need to there, I know what I'm saying, they help me to. So that I'm very.
You know what I was, but all my students are like, you, they're all native.
Right, but I still use of AI, but worry about how they
But there's
What is this?
it's hard to see the language. That's not a problem. What do you see?
Somebody else is right. I know somebody else is got that. But you can't.
So the problem might not be
Yes,
there.
I did hear about that.
Most students are supervised.
They can also just also
So it's circular, so we're in the, but it looks like that. So.
the authority.
Also, everybody goes last, so they don't, so you can use it.
Will they tacitly just accept it? Right.
You want every, no, I'm just to build on that, right, which is correct, which is if you're learning outcomes, that you wanna teach them grammar, and that's how. Or how to write. And right, whatever that means. That's all, then you no, I mean, they'll teach you class, so that it's a challenge, right?
We didn't start with 5 o'clock.
No, the problem is, it's also not, but last, we're supposed to be teaching each other, so. Yeah.
Changes.
But in the.
You know, I was thinking,
Built in,
you can look at
examples and teach them about what else.
it shows the average, you know,
Understand what kind
but
of
likely, I don't know, it's different.
create.
There's no other.
I don't know.
What does it mean?
So I feel like
Here's where you can stop.
knowing the how to write is
But that cross.
important, kind of writing one word.
Yeah, just make sure that they are using it.
Then to write, I just
The worry is you like something like this.
That's how they
Everything.
But you can't talk sophisticated academics, you're not.
right, so for example, my class.
Was that,
Disposition.
are you group three?
Collaborative.
Collaborative?
Oh, we use collaboration.
No, that's okay. Group 3 is collaborative. And group 4? Curious.
Curious.
So can we hear for a little bit about what your discussions were like?
Yeah.
And if there's stuff from your language or things that you wrote down that you wanted to highlight or draw our attention to? What were some of your conversations like?
What?
Here's the person to say it. You're really productive. Go.
What were the highlights of your conversation? And maybe what did you struggle with as you were trying to come up with this language?
It was hard to convince.
That's hard to convince.
Already.
You had to pretend to be enthusiastic.
We also talk about if students like didn't follow this guide, we try to come up better language to follow them, but we end up it's their loss. Even before AI, students didn't try to do something easier for them.
Yeah.
That's their loss. So I think it doesn't matter if it's AI or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think one of the most interesting things was, what does it mean to be an AI enthusiast? Does that mean that you set no boundaries? Because there's a very strong sense of, where do they show the learning? And so how do you get them to document the AI use in a way that is specific and realistic and that you can look at? And not flip into, wanting to limit and no longer be the enthusiast. So that was I think the big stumbling block.
It's great.
Also think we struggled with learning outcome itself becomes, how did I use AI? Right.
Yeah.
Maybe a better, user of AI, doesn't really address the underlying learning outcome and goal that you wanted.
Yeah.
So,
Connection to the learning outcomes becomes that much more important. I also think this idea that you can be enthusiastic about these tools while still offering guidance, while still engaging in discussion about what responsible use looks like, while still, right, like enthusiasm doesn't mean do whatever you want, I don't even care, right? Like enthusiasm about the tools means can mean all the things that you described.
I still want your brain to do some work. But I'm enthusiastic about what AI could do to help you work your brain.
So the key for us was to think of it as a collaborator, but then there was another group, collaborator.
Yeah.
But, so what were you thinking when you said that enthusiasm?
We were just thinking about the continuum of acceptance, and enthusiastic seemed like the most to one side. I like that collaborative sort of takes a bit of time to unpack the word collaborative.
Also, I mean, for me, and when I think about like Kogat's approach to AI, I think of enthusiasm. Like you don't put slogans on the side of a bus if you're not enthusiastic about something, right? And so I was kind of thinking about some of the conversations I've had with folks there. Just because you're enthusiastic about it doesn't mean the nature of the academic project is different. Like we still owe our students what we owe them, and they still owe themselves, right? And so collaborative, I think, is a little bit almost more specific in like an approach to like a, when we're thinking about enthusiasm, it's kind of like, how do I continue reaching my objective with this level of enthusiasm? Whereas, I don't know, maybe collaborative group, you want to talk a little bit about, I feel like your conversations about collaboration and that approach was interesting.
I guess so. Yeah, we had an interesting conversation about what that word actually means too. So, and one of the things I mentioned was for some of the students, the AI, it has this weird way of becoming your friend. You interrogate it, because one of the things that we were talking about is, well, maintaining objectivity and interrogating the AI and sort of pushing it and making sure that if you're going to use it as a collaborator, like it's a good collaborator. It's not a bad collaborator. It's not giving you bad information, or it's not leading you down the bad rabbit hole. But the psychology of it, sort of. We were talking about, Hannah mentioned some interesting articles about how the article you were talking about, where did studies on how people would use AI and what happened to their cognition.
Oh, the MIT studies. It's fascinating.
Yeah, therapy. It's one of the primary uses, right? Dr. MIT study.
No. This is the students who use AI don't remember.
Oh,
it was a very small study.
Effect on their brain.
Yeah, the brain. That's the brain.
Oh, yeah, it was a very small study, but.
But anyway, just things to think about. What these boundaries are. Like we have to give them really clear boundaries and sort of. Are there ways to put language in the syllabus to sort of head off that what the AI is? It's a tool. But we have to remain objective about how we use it too, or something like that.
Yeah, making it an object of study at the same time as it's a tool, really spelling out what these ideas mean, thinking about what it is as a collaborator, and particularly for students who are younger, thinking about will there be an inclination to give deference to what it provides you, and I think this is probably a little bit of where you're headed, but in thinking about the alignment to learning outcomes, particularly at the core, where metacognition is always at the forefront of our thinking, by making explicit your practice of its use of documenting how you're going about your thinking, your thought process, what that collaboration looks like, keeping a log of prompts, as you suggest. Helps actually in some ways to deepen learning, potentially, rather like not necessarily by virtue of what it's spitting out, but by virtue of the actions that you're taking in development of your ideas. The other thing I'll say is we also talked about like how much should you have done before you get to this point.
Yeah.
Practical question for those in the collaborator or enthusiastic tables. For those of you who might have policies that disfavor use of devices inside classrooms, or, limited to certain circumstances, is there a way, can you occupy that place and still also see AI as a collaborator, as a partner? If our students are that are relying on AI and they need their devices in order to be able to engage that way, even in, let's say, a seminar setting. Yes, you can, I think you can separate them out. How do you do that? Well, you would limit their use of electronic devices and have them get into small groups and have them write by hand, record by hand, have one person be the recorder to put it on a Google Doc, things like that. I think the key here is transparency and specificity and why, as Allison said. Give the reason why you want students to do it this way, and then you'll get the buy-in. But I think that there can be a way, it's like, I understand you're allowed to use AI at home when you're doing this assignment, but I want to see you be able to pull out of the text, and I want us to do this in the classroom in this way. Does that work for you?
It works for me, I'm just not sure it will work for them without it feeling a little, I don't mean this in that way, a little hokey, a little bit.
Synthetic.
Well,
But you do group, I don't know, you do group work where you're just working, like we are right now. Like, I don't have to be on my phone to talk to you about these ideas. So, I think we don't want AI to be the only collaborator. We want people to work together. So I think you can have assignments, activities where you're working with your colleagues and you're learning from each other, and you're talking about ideas, and you don't mediate it through a device. Right. That's part of it. Right. That doesn't seem hokey.
that doesn't, I think once you get to a place where you're like doing a presentation or anything that's kind of more of a presentation where people might be relying on slides or materials, that's the question.
I did the assignment, I'm shifting my assignment just to writing their response to the material, to what kind of question you can have from this material.
What question could you ask?
Yeah, that kind of more asking inquiry, that reflection, that kind of changing the way of using AI, because it's like they summarize or reflect. Like they like to use AI, but we might ask them question. What kind of a new question you have from material, they start to think by themselves.
AI can still do that.
Yeah, but then again, that's their loss.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're talking about a societal problem.
Yes.
Which is that if I have a colleague who said he's gonna ban phones.
Yeah.
Including at the break, and it's a block class. Said good luck.
Yeah.
I brought up a really interesting comments during our discussion about even the word collaborate. Because like in collaboration, like there's a certain level of trust, or like what is this that we're collaborating? What
is the object?
Right? Like what is this? It's like an output, right? So even that word collaboration is a little bit kind of yeah. Do you want to add anything else? I thought that was really helpful.
I just thought of one example of an assignment that sort of speaks to that. So my cost benefit class that I teach for graduate students, I had them at home basically read a sort of like a cost benefit evaluation, answer some questions about it. So first, they were supposed to do it, human does it, no AI. Then I said, ask the AI the same questions. And then in class, they brought both sets of answers. and we talked about them, we compared, and we saw what the AI got better, spoiler alert, nothing, and what, the human got. And so they didn't have their computers out, for them, or they were just looking at a piece of paper or their homework, but it was really that conversation about, okay, here's what the AI can do for you, here are the pitfalls of AI that kind of came out of that. And they were coming up with like the pitfalls, and they were shocked themselves, like how little helpful, like how not helpful the AI actually was. So it's sort of, I did that early in the semester, so it's sort of also like disabusing with the notion that AI was going to be their savior in this class, because it's not. So anyway.
That's a really good point. We need to show the limits of AI, and then they'll self-regulate a little bit.
It generates language, but it just doesn't generate insights. I like what Hannah was saying about how JSTOR's AI doesn't try to be a friend, and it admits, maybe I'm.
So we got into a discussion of like how AI is embedded in basically like all, I'm the education librarian, and all the databases, they're all explained to, like, oh, just pay more money for the AI feature, every single one of them. But the JSTOR one, actually, I took a look at it, it seems okay, like it was thoughtfully designed. And it just uses what the corpus that's in JSTOR itself, it doesn't go out to somebody. And then if it doesn't know an answer, it'll say, sorry, we don't know, right? Like,
So I've looked at, and it'll summarize the article for you, and it will find other articles that are similar. Does it do anything else?
like other things too, I'm forgetting what exactly, but it's not gonna, if there's a limit, it cannot answer your question. And it'll say, not quite sure, but these are other resources that might help you. And then it'll come to those other resources.
So it's not enough anymore to say, if you want to limit AI use, you can't say, use the library database.
That's right.
Because AI is incorporated into.
Even in the library
I was told by the AU librarian, I did a session where they said that the AI assistance there is only for what AU has. But only what AU has.
But JSTOR is a database of academic articles. And it now has an AI tool incorporated into it, which will like you find an article on JSTOR, an academic article, and it says, do you want a summary?
That's what the AU library AI assistance also does.
Yeah, so you're talking about so the library catalog also has like a big on-top feature, so that's the library catalog itself, where you can find basically everything has AI in it. And then all the independent databases also are trying to, like they all have AI.
So should we stop trying to teach them how to read?
Well, I think that the highlight there on collaboration that's interesting to me too is like, our students think about this a lot when they have to collaborate in groups. They're like, are we getting one grade or is everybody gonna get their own grade? And how can I identify the stuff that I did so I can make sure I got credit for what's mine? And I feel like that's something that in the spirit of a collaborative disposition is something that could be highlighted to help students. Like, if you have to identify who's done what and your identification is the machine did most of it, imagine if the grades were given to who did what, right? Those kinds of conversations can be really useful, and then also bring up these issues of trust. Like most students would like to say, I trust my group mate to tell me if they don't know, they can't do it, they did it badly, they need help, right? But an AI tool, if used collaboratively, may introduce some limits in that regard, because AI tools want to answer the question.
In terms of grading, I find a lot of cheating or consideration coming from students of fear of grade.
The fear of the grade.
Grade. Yeah. I mean, I find a lot of innovative teaching was blocked by grading system.
Yeah.
So Allison told me about a podcast, and I listened to it yesterday.
Oh, Betsy listened to it too.
Okay. What's the guy's name?
Jim Lang.
Jim Lang's podcast, where he interviews somebody about cheating. Students are not going to stop cheating because we're grading them.
Yeah.
And they value the grade more than. Yeah. So I mean, labor-based grading sort of moves them towards maybe more intrinsic motivations, but it's not a cure-all.
So it's Trisha Bertram Gallant, who is like the expert on cheating.
She's my nerd crush / arts pharmacist.
Trisha Bertram Gallant. And it's July 10th, and it's Jim Lang. I don't know if you know James Lang. He's really brilliant.
He's written a lot about
Pedagogy,
small
academic
He has a podcast called Design for Learning. And Trisha Bertram Gallant has a new book, The Opposite of Cheating, Teaching for Integrity in the Age of AI.
I have a copy if you want to borrow it. We didn't hear from the two other groups, so I wanted to check in and just say reflections. You all were skeptical, is that right? Any reflections from that conversation or things that you wanted to highlight?
We had a true AI skeptic, so we just kind of did that
What was some of the language that you felt like didn't help? Sorry.
Yeah, so what I use in my syllabus is just that, it's fine to use AI to generate ideas and for help yourself learn, to get clarification on what was discussed in class, but not to use it for like homework questions or, getting the answers. Which works very well in my more science-based classes.
Mm-hmm.
When I taught research methods, AI was a nightmare for me because at least.
Yeah, I think that gets at one of the challenges of skepticism is that it can sometimes feel like I'm trying to catch people or I'm trying to figure out something that's really hard to figure out a lot of the time. Do you all talk about, or does anybody want to share, how to get around that? Like, how can I be an AI skeptic and still be prioritizing pedagogy and my learning outcomes without an over-reliance on kind of detection, policing, catching people misusing? Yeah.
Got some great ideas.
Well, we talked about how, it can't just be limited to the little one paragraph on the syllabus, but your kind of AI proofing has to be throughout the entire course. Like every single assignment has to be redesigned in some way so that you're really prioritizing imperfect, messy, works in progress types of thinking that maybe students will feel more empowered to do on their own instead of trying to do it perfectly and then rely on AI. And sharing rubrics that prioritize that type of thinking as well. I think we had a lot of good ideas about AI, also discussing with students, limiting you to a certain set of materials, a certain inside a box. And sometimes, depending on the class, you really want students to think outside the box and actually produce ideas, be creative that AI, literally can't do by design. And so kind of hammering that home and those values in the classroom through different scaffolding assignments. It's got one idea that I'm trying to use in my labs.
I realize exams are not the only type of assessment, but I use them quite a bit in my class, just because it's easy for the class, but isn't that really the only, I wouldn't call it foolproof, but effective way to put guardrails around AI? Yes, you can use AI to study in various ways. Synthesize your notes. Please do the reading, but if you need a summary to reading, fine. You can prepare, but when you're going to come into class, you're going to write 2 long essays. You're going to be on the Canvas lockdown browser, or you're going to do a blue book. And those 2 hours, you're on your own.
Yeah,
Is that old-fashioned, too traditional?
I think people make decisions about that based on their learning outcomes and what's right for their.
And I realize I lend myself more easily to some classes than others. But
Yeah.
There's that Naomi Berry one about what do you know when the internet is down?
Yeah. Could issues arise? Well, these are outlier-y type situations. Have I seen them? Yeah. Have I seen situations where students are asked to complete an exam in a designated setting without using any electronic tools and they still end up in my office? Yes. But
they're sitting in class with me for 2 hours.
Not for you. I'm just saying, I've seen academic integrity cases, but I don't know that that's I'm not saying that to upend the design. I guess even to Kelly's point about the podcast, Trisha Bertram Gallant, cheating happens because people are human. And I mean, I have a more expansive way of addressing that, but I do think that like, if you think it's important for students to be able to, you quoted Naomi Barron, sort of like, what do we know when the internet is down, right? Like, then yeah, then that's right for you, certainly. And sometimes I will say, like, if students are deep in their use of AI and are like doing things like putting their class notes into AI and having the AI tool like summarize or whatever, a lot of our students like memorize stuff for exams, right? Like, and so coming into an exam, like, and our students can often memorize so much more information than I ever remember being able to memorize when I was a college student. But like, we'll see like, here's a whole paragraph of text that a student has memorized in preparation for the exam, and it came from the textbook, from an article, from an AI tool summary, or whatever. Can't control for that necessarily unless you want to put some limits on how students study or give some guidelines for responsible ways to study. But
yeah, right. Good questions.
I have a colleague who is, it's a block class for freshmen, and she is, last year, all their writing was done in the classroom. All writing for assessment was done in the classroom. They were allowed to bring in their notes, whatever they wanted, but the writing had to be done in the classroom.
Handwritten notes?
Right, the notes could be AI. Notes could be AI, but we don't live in a perfect world anymore. We never did live in a perfect world.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
But I took tests all through my school days without a resort to my notes. You had to sit there.
I know, but you didn't have a computer with you in your pocket.
Well, but
And so,
but you can't use
once the
computer.
internet
You
came
can't use
along,
it.
well, no, my point is, you don't need to memorize anything. You need to understand concepts and how, I mean, to
Well, that goes to the
me, learning
question.
outcome is not about memorizing things.
Well, but you're asking to write critically. You write essay questions that demand they write critically and analytically. Not just a short answer, here's what, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
The prisoner's dilemma is, you know, you put it in terms of some case study and policy case study, and they have to write critically about it. That's not perfect. There'll be some memorization as part of that, but I can't think of a more effective way in my class at least. And I'll have a research paper as well, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to put guardrails around that, but for the most part, it's gonna be assessments in class, that was what your notes.
We didn't hear from this group, so I just want to make sure that you all get a chance. We had curious. Right?
We did not talk too much about curiosity. We're all curious, and but we were in such a different subject matter of teaching, so there's no consensus what's right or wrong for each of us. But I think Eric had a very good idea about how we should adjust our teaching method with the student AI. Like if everybody wrote a wonderful paper at the end of semester, what about have an oral exam to balance out how real, how not real it is writing? I think that's an excellent idea, like a dissertation, your dissertation. Defend your dissertation, you defend your paper, and that's where you get enough grade, you know, not just based on paper written part. I think we have to just learn how to collaborate with students and the tool, because the tool is here.
The other thing is I think at AU have an advantage that our public universities don't have, like a small class size, so we can do tutorial style, individual interrogative back and forth kind of learning, and that can be paired with research papers in a way that, but you know, it's time consuming for the instructor, but you need to set up early in the semester a sit-down discussion, later a follow-up one, you know, at the end, the oral exam where people can query back and forth, so you're not just turning in something you did. You know, I think there are ways to do it. I've kind of been doing it for many years. And I do it extraordinarily well, and students actually prepare better for it because they're, for some reason, terrified about being embarrassed in person, whereas they'll write anything in a rule book, and it's like no matter how awful it is, they're not embarrassed. But I find that, you know, it's an advantage that we have. And the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really important is the process notes that some journals are requiring. One thing I'm doing this semester in my graduate research seminar is requiring a research journal that's dated and done down And I encourage them, and we're curious and enthusiastic. I'm encouraging them to use AI tools and to keep a log of it. And to emphasize, I'm thinking of even this semester saying, I want you to put wherever you clearly are, human value added, it's coming from you rather than AI or wherever else you look. I want you to highlight it and just put words down and say, this is my idea in this paragraph. And then later you can cut it out, like if you're going to submit it to a journal or something. But I'm thinking about doing something like that because I've always stressed the most important thing to focus on is your value added. An empirical contribution to knowledge is important, theoretical interpretation is good, but show me where you are adding value of your own. And I think that's triply important in this AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
We are out of time.
We're out of time. Can I just say, I did a workshop earlier last week for the Center on Teaching. I have a handout on AI and assignments. And so it's on the Center for Faculty Excellence. But I just set up an email and with it attached. If anyone wants to put their email here, I will just email it to you.
On the Google Doc?
It's not on the Google Doc.
Oh, okay.
No, it's my email.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
And the last part of it is how to create a climate in the classroom where students are discouraged from using AI. So the skeptic is in there. Thank you, you guys.
Good luck at the semester start. athomas@american.edu. If any issues come up, please let me know. And thanks, Kelly, so much.
Can I ask, so I've already sent my students my syllabus, but I think, well, the idea that I'm gonna add an AI section, you guys now have something, is it sort of covering the spectrum of your skeptics you can resist, or do you guys, are you suggesting a particular?
So what I learned, I think, is focus on like questions to help you write. There are some examples word language, or you can get not as a user, maybe seeing some of this, like, oh, I can grab this, I can grab that. I also think challenge what is
Yeah, we did that with training problems.
I don't know if you remember, like, you better mention like the AI is like taking over the art side of it too. Right. Yeah, so we had that, I remember. It's like I studied a slide by you was shared by Professor Laura. And I was on writing for a change of how AI is into like film and right. It says it was basically writing, but it was associated with like how it is getting increased. Thank you for saying. Yeah, no worries. Well, really helpful.
and then you can use like disclaimer and see how to run it out. And it doesn't post it.
The integrity website is pretty clear.
The share you
Oh.
have, so.
Had a good session.
Thank you.